The conference room went completely silent the moment I signed. "Welcome, I'm happy you're here." The elderly woman smiled through tears. Across the lobby, my manager's face lost all color. Then he sprinted toward us so fast he nearly slipped on the polished marble floor. That was the exact moment I realized this wasn't just another hotel guest, and that everyone who had ignored her was about to wish they hadn't. "My name is Emma Collins. I'm 32 years old, and until that day I was just another front desk associate at a 4-star hotel in Manchester. I wasn't the loudest employee, the most ambitious, or the manager's favorite. I simply believed every guest deserved to be treated with dignity, even on the busiest days. That belief came from my younger brother Noah. He was born deaf. Growing up, British Sign Language wasn't something special I learned for a certificate. It was simply how our family laughed, argued, apologized, and said, 'I love you.' Oddly enough, I had never mentioned that skill at work. No one had ever asked. Before I tell you why one ordinary shift turned my entire life upside down, I'd love to know what time it is where you're watching and what part of the world you're listening from. I still smile every time I think about how far this story eventually reached. It was a rainy Thursday evening when she arrived. She looked to be in her late 60s, dressed elegantly in a dark green coat with a small leather suitcase by her side. She walked confidently to the reception desk, handed over her reservation confirmation, and smiled politely. One of my coworkers greeted her. The woman gently pointed to her ear and then made the universal gesture for signing. My coworker froze. "I'm sorry, I don't know sign language," he mumbled before looking around for someone else. No one stepped forward. One receptionist suddenly became very interested in rearranging brochures. Another disappeared into the back office. Even my supervisor sighed impatiently. "Can someone else deal with this?" Those words instantly reminded me of all the times I'd watched people avoid my brother simply because communicating with him required a little extra effort. I couldn't stand there. I walked over, smiled warmly, and signed, "Good evening. Welcome to the Ashford Grand. My name is Emma. How may I help you today?" The woman's expression changed immediately. Her shoulders relaxed. She smiled so brightly that it almost made me emotional. She signed back, "I've been waiting all day for someone to understand me." We chatted naturally while I checked her reservation. She had requested a room equipped with visual emergency alarms and vibrating alert devices. Those requests had been submitted weeks earlier. No one had bothered to prepare them. As I apologized and arranged everything myself, I noticed movement behind me. Our hotel manager, Daniel Foster, was rushing across the lobby. He almost never left his office. His eyes went straight to the woman. Then, surprisingly, he bowed his head respectfully before awkwardly signing, "Welcome, we're honored to have you." He only knew a few signs, but he clearly wanted to show respect. He quietly turned to me. "Emma, would you personally escort Miss Margaret Hayes to her suite?" Personally, only VIP guests received personal escorts. I picked up her suitcase. Inside the elevator, she smiled at me. "You treated me like a person before you treated me like a customer." I laughed softly. "Isn't that how it should always be?" She looked at me thoughtfully. "You'd be surprised how rare that is." At the time, I thought she was simply sharing another disappointing travel experience. I had no idea she was quietly evaluating every employee in the building. When I returned downstairs, the atmosphere had completely changed. Coworkers suddenly surrounded me. "You know sign language? Why didn't you ever tell us?" "What was she saying?" Before I could answer, Daniel asked me to step into his office. He closed the door, then he asked, "Emma, do you know who Miss Margaret Hayes really is?" I shook my head. He placed a folder on his desk. Inside were newspaper articles, magazine covers, and photographs. Margaret Hayes wasn't just another traveler. She had founded one of Britain's largest charities supporting deaf children and accessible workplaces. Even more importantly, she advised major hotel chains on accessibility standards. My stomach dropped. Then Daniel said something that made my heart race. She booked under a private name because she wanted to experience our hotel exactly as an ordinary deaf guest would. Everything suddenly made sense. She hadn't wanted special treatment, she wanted honesty, and honesty was exactly what she'd received. She had seen employees avoid eye contact. She had seen staff pretend to be busy. She had seen people silently pass responsibility to someone else. Daniel rubbed his forehead. "If she publishes her experience exactly as it happened." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Our reputation would be destroyed. I expected panic. Instead, something unexpected happened. Daniel looked directly at me. What would you do if you were in charge? No manager had ever asked for my opinion before. I answered honestly, I'd stop treating accessibility like an optional service. He nodded slowly, but not everyone appreciated that answer. Within days, whispers spread across the hotel. Some coworkers blamed me. Emma made us look bad. Another complained if she hadn't shown off with sign language, none of this would have become a problem. That accusation stung. I hadn't tried to embarrass anyone. I'd simply helped a guest. Then my supervisor confronted me during lunch. You should have called security or management first. I stared at him. For helping someone check in, you crossed professional boundaries. No, I replied calmly. I crossed the room because everyone else refused to. His expression hardened. You think you're better than the rest of us. For the first time in years, I stopped apologizing for doing the right thing. I don't think I'm better, I answered. I just think every guest deserves the same respect. That conversation changed everything, but what happened next changed my future. The following morning, Margaret invited Daniel and me to breakfast before she checked out. She looked at me and smiled. Emma, may I ask you something? Of course. If you could change one thing about this hotel today, what would it be? I didn't need time to think. I'd train every employee to communicate with empathy before teaching them luxury service. Margaret smiled. Then she turned toward Daniel. That's exactly why she'll go much further than this reception desk. Daniel looked genuinely thoughtful. Then Margaret revealed the real reason for her visit. Her organization was selecting one hotel to become the national model for accessible hospitality. The winning hotel would receive funding, specialized training, international recognition, and recommendations across thousands of travel guides. We had almost lost that opportunity within 5 minutes of her arrival. Almost. She looked at me. One employee reminded me that genuine hospitality still exists. 3 weeks later, every department attended accessibility workshops. Visual alarms were installed. Staff learned basic British Sign Language. Menus became easier to understand. Reception procedures completely changed. Some employees resisted at first, others embraced the changes. Then something happened I never expected. Daniel promoted me, not because I knew sign language, because he believed I saw people others overlooked. He created a brand new leadership position focused on guest inclusion and accessibility and asked me to lead it. Months later, our hotel received an award for outstanding inclusive service. During the ceremony, Margaret stood on stage and addressed the audience. She never mentioned my name. Instead, she said, "The finest hotels are not measured by chandeliers or marble floors." She paused. "They're measured by how they treat the guest who cannot ask for help in the usual way." The audience stood and applauded. I felt tears filling my eyes. A year later, I watched one of my former coworkers greet a deaf family entirely in sign language. Their little daughter smiled exactly the way my brother used to smile whenever someone made the effort to communicate with him. In that moment, I realized real change doesn't begin with expensive renovations. It begins with one person deciding that another human being deserves to be seen. Today, I help hotels across the UK build more inclusive guest experiences. People often tell me my career changed because I knew sign language. They're wrong. Sign language opened the first conversation. Compassion opened every door that followed. Looking back, I learned that family isn't just the people who raise you. Sometimes it's the lessons they leave you with. My brother taught me that respect is a language everyone can learn, even if they never memorize a single sign. The woman everyone ignored didn't change my life because she was influential. She changed it because she reminded me that doing the right thing, especially when no one else will, is never a small act. And sometimes, the quietest welcome becomes the loudest message in the room.